The clown returned. A new town's nightmare begins. Have you ever felt the icy grip of fear while gazing into the painted smile of a clown, wondering what sinister secrets lie behind those cheerful eyes? In the once peaceful town of Willow Creek, an unsettling shadow has begun to creep, weaving its way through the quiet streets and echoing in the whispers of the wind. This is no ordinary tale of childhood fears. This is a story where nightmares are born, slinking from the shadows with a chilling intent. In towns not too far from here, whispers of eerie disappearances have echoed like a dark storm. Each tale begins the same, a clown lurking in the fading light, seen only by the unlucky few who dared wander too close. The townspeople spoke in hushed tones of its haunting laugh that pierced the silence of the night, a sound that seemed to embed itself into the very soul of their nightmares. One by one, people vanished, leaving behind only a trace of their last terrified screams. Now, Willow Creek stands on the precipice of this growing terror. A sense of dread hangs heavy in the air, thick as the fog that rolls in each evening, swallowing the town in its ghostly embrace. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows that dance like phantoms, one must wonder, when the clown returns, whose nightmare will it be next? The carnival never ends. In the quiet town of Willow Creek, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, life had always been simple. The townsfolk prided themselves on their tight-knit community and the sense of security that came with knowing your neighbors. Violence was a distant memory, a faint echo of a time long past. 17-year-old Emily Carson had lived in Willow Creek all her life. She knew every street by heart, every shortcut through the woods. Her morning routine was a comforting lullaby. The same faces, the same places, the same cadence of life. But recently, an unsettling undercurrent had begun to ripple through the town, a whisper of something sinister lurking just out of sight. Emily's fascination with clowns began in her early childhood, a time when her world was filled with the bright and whimsical allure of the circus. Her parents would take her to the annual fair that visited Willow Creek every summer. For Emily, the highlight was always the clown show. She would sit mesmerized, her eyes wide with wonder and delight as the clowns tumbled and danced across the stage. Their colorful costumes and exaggerated expressions seemed to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, offering a glimpse into a world where joy and laughter reigned supreme. She was particularly drawn to the way clowns could shift effortlessly between roles. One moment a bumbling fool, the next a graceful performer. It was as if they held a secret key to the mysteries of identity and emotion, a key that Emily longed to possess. She would mimic their antics at home, donning her own makeshift costumes and painting her face with her mother's lipstick and eyeshadow, creating a kaleidoscope of colors on her cheeks. Emily's bedroom was a shrine to her passion, filled with clown figurines, posters, and books. Her favorite possession was an old, tattered clown doll with a crooked smile and faded red nose, a cherished gift from her grandmother. She believed that clowns, with their ability to make people laugh, despite their own hidden sorrows, embodied a courage she aspired to. Her fascination was not just with their comedic acts, but also with the enigmatic nature of clowns. The way they seemed to exist on the edge of reality, straddling the line between joy and melancholy. To Emily, clowns were more than entertainers, they were storytellers, weaving tales of human emotion with each exaggerated gesture and honk of a red nose. This deep-seated admiration blossomed into a lifelong intrigue, shaping her perspective and fueling her creative spirit as she navigated the complexities of growing up in an ever-changing world. It began with the balloons, bright, cheerful orbs of color that seemed to materialize in the most unlikely of places. One morning, as Emily walked to school, She found a cluster of crimson balloons tied to the old oak tree at the park's edge. They bobbed gently in the breeze, their glossy surfaces shining in the early light. She paused, a chill running down her spine, though she couldn't say why. They were just balloons after all. As days turned into weeks, more balloons appeared, tethered to street lamps floating in the schoolyard, even tied to the rusty gate of the town's abandoned amusement park. Each one seemed to carry an unspoken message, a silent declaration that someone or something was watching. Then came the laughter. It started as a faint, distant echo, barely audible over the hum of crickets and the rustling leaves. Emily first heard it one night as she lay in bed, the soft glow of the moon casting long shadows across her room. It was a low chuckle, eerily cheerful, yet entirely out of place in the quiet of the night. She sat up, heart pounding, straining to hear more. But the laughter faded as quickly as it had come, leaving her in a silence that felt unnaturally heavy. Emily dismissed it as a figment of her imagination, a trick of the mind. Meanwhile, in the room next door, her brother Alex was deep into his night work routine. The desk lamp bathed his workspace in a warm circle of light, contrasting sharply with the darkness that surrounded him. He was hunched over his laptop, fingers tapping rhythmically on the keyboard as he coded, the glowing screen reflecting off. His glasses, a mug of half-drunk coffee, sat precariously close to the edge of the table, forgotten amidst the lines of code that demanded his full attention. The room was silent, save for the occasional click of the mouse and the soft whir of the laptop fan. Alex pushed his chair back slightly, stretching his arms above his head, and took a moment to rub the fatigue from his eyes. Nights like these were routine for him, a blend of focus and solitude that he found oddly comforting. He glanced at the clock, noting the time with a sigh, and returned to his work. The gentle hum of the night seeping in through the open window, mingling with his thoughts. But the following day, as she walked home from school, she noticed something else. A crude drawing on the wall of the local diner. It was a clown, its painted face twisted into a grotesque grin, eyes wide and unblinking. Emily stopped and stared, a sense of unease creeping over her. The image seemed to pulse with a life of its own, mocking her with its garish colors. Rumors began to circulate among the townspeople, each tale more chilling than the last. Some claimed to have seen fleeting glimpses of a clown lurking in the shadows. Others spoke of strange footprints appearing overnight, leading nowhere and disappearing into thin air. The town's collective anxiety grew, feeding off the fear that something malevolent had taken root in their midst. Meanwhile, across town, Mark Stevens, the night security guard at the old mill, had his own encounters with the bizarre. His job was uneventful, the hours long and silent. But recently, he had begun to feel a presence, a sensation of being watched that prickled at the back of his neck. One evening, as he made his rounds, he heard it, the unmistakable sound of laughter echoing through the empty corridors. It was distant, yet unmistakably close, a sound so unnaturally joyful that it sent shivers racing down his spine. Mark paused, flashlight beams slicing through the darkness, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. That night, as he sat alone in the security office, he caught a glimpse of movement on the monitor. A shadow, fleeting and formless, danced at the periphery of the camera's view. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing, but it vanished before he could discern any details. As the days passed, Emily and Mark found themselves drawn together by their shared experiences, each confiding in the other about the strange happenings that seemed to be escalating. There was comfort in knowing they weren't alone, yet their fear was palpable, a living thing that grew with every passing day. One evening, as they walked through the deserted streets, the laughter returned, louder this time, echoing off the brick walls around them. They froze, hearts pounding in unison. Emily clutched Mark's arm as her eyes darted around, searching, for the source. "There!" Mark whispered, pointing to a darkened alley. A figure stood at its entrance, half hidden by shadow. The figure was small and strangely hunched, its outline distorted by the flickering streetlight. As they watched, it moved, stepping into the light. It was the clown. The painted face seemed to glow in the dim light, its grotesque grin stretching impossibly wide. The eyes, dark and hollow, fixed on them with an intensity that felt almost tangible. The clown raised a hand, gesturing with slow, deliberate movements, inviting them closer. Paralyzed by fear, Emily and Mark stood rooted to the spot, unable to tear their gazes away. The clown began to move, its steps eerily silent as it advanced toward them, its painted grin twisting into something more sinister with each step. The laughter grew louder, a cacophony that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once, echoing off the alley walls like a haunting symphony. Just as panic threatened to overwhelm them, a sudden gust of wind swept through the alley, extinguishing the streetlight in a burst of sparks. The darkness was absolute, pressing in on them from all sides. In that suffocating void, every second stretched into eternity. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat that matched the terror coursing through her veins. Mark reached for her hand, his grip trembling yet firm, as if anchoring them both to reality. They could hear the shuffle of footsteps, indistinct yet unmistakable, growing closer. The air grew colder, a chill that gnawed at their very bones. Suddenly, the light flickered back to life, casting long shadows that danced menacingly on the walls. The alley was empty, the clown had vanished into the night. But the oppressive silence that followed was almost worse, leaving them with the chilling certainty that their ordeal was far from over. In the days that followed, the town's unease deepened. The balloons continued to appear, laughter drifted through the night air, and the clown graffiti multiplied, each image more disturbing than the last. Emily and Mark shared their story, but few believed them, dismissing it as a product of overactive imaginations and small-town hysteria. Yet, for Emily and Mark, the memory lingered, a haunting reminder that the line between reality and nightmare had blurred. The clown, with its painted smile and hollow eyes, was still out there, lurking in the shadows of Willow Creek, waiting for the next chapter of its terrifying game to begin. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the town was once again swallowed by darkness, the question remained: when the clown returned, whose nightmare would it be next? Painted smiles in the fog. In the heart of an old industrial city where the rain fell ceaselessly and the skies were a perpetual shade of gray, stood the derelict remnants of a once thriving train station. Its platforms and tracks lay deserted, swallowed by weeds and rust. Nearby, abandoned factories loomed like skeletal giants, their windows shattered and walls scarred by time and neglect. This foggy town, shrouded in mist and mystery, was steeped in local legends that whispered of the supernatural. It was said that the spirits of workers who had perished in tragic accidents during the city's industrial heyday still roamed the empty streets, their mournful wails carried on the wind. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones of the phantom conductor, a ghostly figure rumored to haunt the old train station. Those who had claimed to see him described a spectral man in a tattered uniform, forever searching for a train that would never arrive. Into this bleak landscape stepped a weary figure, John Harris, a middle-aged night shift janitor employed at the station, tasked with maintaining the semblance of order amidst the chaos. John had grown used to the solitude of his work, the echo of his own footsteps, his only companion as he moved through the cavernous halls. Yet recently, a sense of unease had begun to creep into his routine, a feeling that he was not alone. He often caught glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corner of his eye, disappearing into the fog just as quickly as they appeared. The town's legends gnawed at his mind, weaving their eerie tales into the fabric of his nightly rounds, leaving him questioning what was real and what was mere folklore. One dreary evening, as rain hammered against the station's tin roof, John made his rounds, pushing his mop across the grimy floors. The flickering fluorescent lights above cast a sickly glow, creating shadows that seemed to dance and writhe with a life of their own. From the corner of his eye, he caught a movement on one of the security monitors, a flicker of color that vanished before he could focus on it. John paused, brow furrowed, and peered closer at the screen. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a face, painted white with a grotesque grin, but it disappeared in an instant, leaving him staring at an empty hallway. He shook his head, chalking it up to fatigue and a trick of the light. As days turned into weeks, the flickers on the monitors became more frequent, each one gnawing at John's nerves like an insidious itch. Paranoia crept in, weaving its way through his thoughts like a persistent vine. He found himself glancing over his shoulder while mopping, the mundane task now fraught with anxiety. Sleep eluded him, the haunting images replaying in his mind whenever he closed his eyes. John's grip on reality began to slip. He started to misplace things, a set of keys, a mop handle, only to find them later in places he swore he never left them. Conversations with colleagues became stilted, his responses delayed, as if he were tuning in from a distant world. The sound of the rain, once a comforting rhythm, now felt like a relentless drumming that mirrored the chaos within his mind. At home, his sanctuary turned into a prison. The familiar walls closed in, oppressive and suffocating. Meals lay untouched, his appetite swallowed by an ever-deepening sense of unease. The television, once a source of distraction, now only echoed the eerie silence of his solitude. John's reflection in the mirror became a stranger. Hollow eyes, framed by shadows, and a face etched with lines of weariness. He wondered if the face he saw on the monitor was his own, twisted by fear and fatigue. Desperation clawed at him, urging him to find the source of his torment. Yet each attempt left him more entangled in a web of uncertainty. As the nights wore on, the station's oppressive atmosphere began to weigh heavily on John's mind. The relentless rain echoed through the hollow structure, a constant reminder of the world outside. Water dripped from corroded pipes, forming puddles that reflected the dim lights overhead. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. It was during these nights that John first heard the music, a faint, distorted melody that seemed to seep through the walls like a ghostly whisper. It was the sound of a carnival, the jaunty notes of an organ playing a tune that should have been cheerful, but felt deeply unsettling. The music grew louder, filling the empty corridors with its eerie resonance. John knew the station's history, how it had once been a bustling hub before the factory shut down and the city fell into decline. He had heard stories of a traveling circus that had passed through, leaving behind tales of strange happenings and unexplained disappearances. But that was decades ago, and surely those stories were just rumors, weren't they? Determined to uncover the source of the music, John began to explore the station's forgotten corners. The shadows seemed to close in around him, and every creak and groan of the old building sent shivers racing down his spine. As he ventured deeper into the bowels of the station, he felt an oppressive weight pressing down on him, as if the very walls were closing in. One night, as he descended into the basement, the music reached a frenzied crescendo. The air was thick with a palpable tension, and the darkness seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. John's heart pounded in his chest, each step echoing like a thunderclap as he moved forward. Suddenly the lights flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. He froze, breath hitching in his throat. From the depths of the shadows, a low chuckle reverberated, echoing off the walls in a maddening cacophony. The sound was unmistakably that of a clown, and it chilled him to the core. With trembling hands, John fumbled for his flashlight. The beam came slicing through the inky blackness. As the light swept across the room, it landed on a figure standing at the far end. A clown, its painted face twisted into a mocking grin, its eyes hollow and unblinking. Paralyzed with fear, John could only watch as the clown began to move, its footsteps eerily silent as it advanced. The music swelled, a haunting symphony that drowned out the sound of his own panicked breathing. The clown raised an arm, gesturing toward him with slow, deliberate movements, as if inviting him to join in some sinister game. In a frenzied burst of adrenaline, John turned and fled, stumbling over debris as he raced back up the stairs. The laughter followed him, growing louder with each step, until he burst into the main concourse, gasping for breath. Desperate and disoriented, John knew he had to get out, to escape the nightmare that had ensnared him. But the station seemed to conspire against him, the corridors twisting and turning in an endless maze. The shadows stretched and shifted, playing tricks on his mind, and the music continued its relentless assault. As he rounded a corner, he skidded to a halt, heart dropping as he realized he had returned to the basement entrance. The door stood ajar, a silent invitation to descend once more into the depths. He hesitated, torn between the fear of what lay below and the terror of what might be behind him. With no other choice, he stepped forward, the door creaking ominously as it swung. Open, the darkness enveloped him, and the music reached a fever pitch, an overwhelming cascade of sound that threatened to drive him mad. His pulse quickened as the walls seemed to close in, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. Suddenly, a flicker of light caught his eye from the end of the corridor. It was faint, barely perceptible, but it pulled at him with an inexplicable urgency. He moved towards it, feeling the weight of the shadows pressing against him, whispering secrets he dared not understand. As he neared the source of the light, a low growl echoed from the depths behind him, sending a shiver down his spine. He glanced back, eyes straining to pierce the inky blackness, but saw nothing. The growl morphed into an unsettling silence, a void that seemed to swallow all sound. His mind raced, fear propelling him forward towards the light. Each step felt like an eternity, the music now a distant echo, replaced by the pounding of his heart. The glow grew brighter, revealing a door he had never seen before, its surface etched with symbols that pulsed softly, as if alive. John reached out with trembling hands, unsure of what awaited beyond. The doorknob was cold to the touch, sending a jolt through his fingertips. As he turned it slowly, a chill wind swept through the corridor, carrying with it a cacophony of whispers that promised both salvation and doom. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open, the light flooding over him as he crossed the threshold, leaving the nightmare and its haunting music behind, for now. But in the depths, the growl returned, a reminder that the darkness was never far behind. In that moment, John understood the truth. He was trapped, ensnared in a nightmare from which there was no escape. The clown was no mere apparition, but a manifestation of the city's forgotten past, a specter that thrived on the fear and despair of those it ensnared. As the darkness closed in, John's senses began to blur, reality slipping away like sand. Through his fingers, the clown's laughter echoed in his ears, a haunting reminder of the game he could never win. And then, silence. The music stopped, the laughter faded, and John Harris was gone, vanished into the shadows of the old station, leaving behind only the whisper of rain and the distant echo of carnival music, a chilling promise that the clown would return once more. The balloons never lie. In the picturesque suburb of Maplewood, where manicured lawns and white picket fences painted a picture of idyllic serenity, 16-year-old Lily Thompson lived a life of routine comfort before the nightmare unfolded. Her days were filled with the rhythm of school, where she excelled in her classes and laughed with her friends during lunch breaks. She loved spending afternoons at the local park, her golden retriever bounding beside her as she chatted with neighbors who knew her by name. Weekends were a tapestry of soccer games, sleepovers, and trips to the community library, where she would lose herself in stories of far-off lands and thrilling adventures. Lily's family embodied the quintessential Maplewood existence. Her parents hosted weekend barbecues, where the aroma of grilled burgers mingled with the laughter of guests. They attended church every Sunday, followed by brunch at the quaint cafe on Main Street, where Lily indulged in her favorite blueberry pancakes. Her brother Sam was her constant companion in their treehouse, a place where they shared secrets and plotted imaginary quests. This was Lily's world, predictable, safe, and wrapped in the warmth of familiarity. By day, Maplewood was a haven of peace, with children playing on the streets and neighbors exchanging pleasantries. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the town in twilight, a sinister veil seemed to fall, transforming the familiar streets into a landscape of shadows and whispers. It began innocently enough, with a letter slipped beneath her window one crisp autumn morning. The envelope was plain, the handwriting neat yet unfamiliar. Inside, a single sheet of paper bore a message written in red ink. "I see you." Confused and slightly unnerved, Lily shoved the letter into her backpack, chalking it up to a prank by one of her classmates. But the letters continued, each one more unsettling than the last. Each morning, she found a red balloon tied to her window, bobbing gently in the breeze, as if mocking her growing unease. Her parents dismissed her concerns, attributing the incidents to teenage mischief. "It's just someone trying to scare you," her mother said with a dismissive wave. "Don't let it get to you." As days turned into weeks, Lily began to question her own perceptions. Her friends, too, seemed unconcerned, suggesting she might be overreacting. "Are you sure you're not just imagining things?" one of them asked with a skeptical smile. "It sounds like something you'd read in a mystery novel." Even her father, who she thought might take her side, casually mentioned that she should stop watching those spooky movies. Every attempt Lily made to prove the letter's existence seemed to backfire. The day she tried to show her parents the latest note, it had inexplicably disappeared from her bag. "See?" her mother sighed. "You're getting worked up over nothing." The constant dismissal began to wear on her, making her doubt herself. She started to wonder if maybe she was being too sensitive, like everyone said. At school, strange rumors circulated that only added to her confusion. She overheard whispers and giggles about how she was seeing things and how it was all in her head. Her once solid friendships felt shaky, as though everyone was in on some joke she wasn't privy to. Despite the mounting evidence, Lily felt increasingly isolated, unsure of what was real and what was part of a cruel game. As the days wore on, the peace of Maplewood felt increasingly fragile. By night, Lily began to hear faint strains of circus, music drifting through her dreams, a haunting melody that seemed to seep into her subconscious like a creeping fog. The music was accompanied by visions of shadowy figures lurking across the street, their outlines blurred and indistinct, as if they were mere figments of her imagination. One evening, as Lily sat at her desk, attempting to focus on her homework, the power suddenly went out. The house was plunged into darkness, the silence oppressive and absolute. Heart-pounding, she fumbled for her phone, its soft glow casting eerie shadows on the walls. In the sudden quiet, she thought she heard a distant chuckle, like the echo of a sinister joke told to the night. Lily's paranoia grew, a creeping dread that gnawed at her every waking moment. She began to notice other oddities, strange footprints. In the garden, the sense of being watched whenever she left the house. Her friends were sympathetic but skeptical, their reassurances doing little to quell her mounting fear. Determined to uncover the truth, Lily dove into research, combing through old news articles and online forums, What she discovered chilled her to the bone. A pattern of clown sightings in towns across the region, each with stories eerily similar to her own. In each case, the sightings were preceded by anonymous letters, balloons, and unsettling music. The stories ended without resolution, the townspeople's fates left hauntingly ambiguous. Despite her findings, Lily's parents remained unconvinced. "It's just a coincidence," her father insisted, his voice tinged with exasperation. "You're letting your imagination run wild." But Lily knew what she had seen, what she had felt. The clown was real, lurking in the shadows of her neighborhood, its presence a dark thread woven into the fabric of her life. Each night she lay awake in bed, straining to hear the faintest hint of laughter carried on the wind, her senses heightened by fear. On a stormy night, when rain lashed against the windows and thunder rumbled ominously in the distance, the power went out once more. Lily's heart leapt into her throat as she reached for her flashlight, its beam cutting through the inky blackness. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence a tangible force pressing in on her from all sides. As she moved cautiously through the house, the shadows seemed to stretch and shift, playing tricks on her mind. She reached the living room, the dim light from her flashlight illuminating the familiar space in ghostly hues. And then she saw it, a figure standing in the corner, half hidden by shadow. The clown, its painted face grotesquely alive in the flickering light, eyes dark and hollow. Its grin stretched wide, a mocking expression that sent chills racing down her spine. Paralyzed by terror, Lily could only watch as the clown raised an arm, gesturing toward her with slow, deliberate movements. The room seemed to close in around her, the walls pulsing with a malevolent energy. The air grew thick and suffocating, charged with an unseen threat that pressed against her from all sides. In a moment of pure instinct, she turned and fled, her feet barely touching the ground as she raced up the stairs. Her breath came in ragged gasps, heart pounding in her chest. The narrow hallway loomed ahead, each shadow flickering ominously, as if they too were alive and conspiring against her. Behind her, the sound of laughter echoed, a chilling melody that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. The laughter grew louder, more insistent, filling the space with its sinister glee. The house itself seemed to twist and warp, corridors stretching impossibly long, doors slamming shut of their own accord. As Lily stumbled forward, the light bulbs flickered and buzzed overhead, casting erratic shadows that danced eerily along the walls. She reached for the banister, her fingers slipping on the cold, sweat-slickened wood. The very air vibrated with menace, a tangible force that threatened to swallow her whole. Her mind screamed for escape, yet every corner turned only revealed more darkness, more shifting shapes that lurked just out of sight. The oppressive atmosphere closed in tighter, a relentless grip that promised no release. With each step, she could feel the weight of the clown's presence, its laughter now a cacophony that drowned out her own desperate cries. And as she reached the top of the stairs, the realization dawned upon her. There was nowhere left to run. The house had become a labyrinth of nightmares, and the darkness was closing in inch by inch, ready to claim her as its own. As she reached her room, the door slammed shut behind her, plunging her into darkness once more. The flashlight flickered and died, leaving her alone with the shadows and the specter of the clown. The storm raged outside, a cacophony of sound that mirrored the turmoil within her. And then silence. The tale of Lily Thompson ends as enigmatically as it began, her fate shrouded in mystery. In the quiet suburb of Maplewood, the clown's game continues, a haunting reminder that even the most peaceful places can harbor the darkest of nightmares. As the storm subsides and the town emerges from the night, the question lingers. When the clown returns, whose nightmare will it be next? You've just witnessed 3 harrowing encounters with a clown that defies reason, evades capture, and reappears when least expected. From the shadows of forgotten towns to the eerie silence of suburban streets, his painted grin persists, lurking in the dark where no one is truly secure. These stories may conclude here, but his presence, that sinister force, is far from fading. If these chilling tales made your heart race, brace yourself for what lurks beyond. Click the like button if you made it to the end, and make sure to subscribe for more spine-tingling true stories that will keep you on edge. Turn on notifications, because the clown's game is far from over, and you'll want to be the first to witness his next return.